channel. Welcome back to the Matrix, if you want to call it that. I want to start off by defining why I said from the Matrix, and for no particular reason other than the discussion that I want to have tonight is just about how absurd life is right now and how absurd it is that we live within these systems that we and I want to apologize first off for the very spontaneous video, and I tend to do this sometimes. I didn't intend to make a live cast tonight. I wanted to just go to bed. Actually, I went to bed really late last night, and then I had all these thoughts on my mind tonight, and I just finished making a video that actually took me, I don't know, I don't usually edit videos, and I'm going to be honest with you all. I'm using my phone right now. If the phone dies, my apologies. It's what I've been using to edit and process all my videos. And it's because both of my cameras died within a day of each other. It was the weirdest thing. And my camcorder is pretty crappy. So I actually have no cameras right now, which is why I actually decided I'm going to take the money from my Patreon fund, and thank you to my patrons. I've just let it build up for a couple months, and that should be enough to get me a new camera and get started. But I actually found these computers on the side of the road, and I was able to get one to work, and it's good enough for me. It's got like 8 gigs of RAM, processes videos, and I downloaded this a free video processing thing. It's like a 30-day trial on Corel. And so I edited this video together, okay? And I'm sure some of you have seen the intro I did, but the other day. But I was just messing around with it, but I really wanted to put together this video of this trip I took to Portland. And I went to see my son's band. He's 26, and he plays in a Grateful Dead cover band. Basically, they just play Dead tunes and some other stuff. But they are, it was worth going. But against my better judgment, I went down to Portland. My wife and I parked somewhere on 3rd and like Everett, Davis or Everett, and maybe Flanders. Mind you, my family did tie-dyes tonight. It was pretty fun. So yeah, I'm all covered in tie-dye. Forgot to put gloves on. So back to the story. We got down to Portland, and all of the streets that go, let's say, north of Burnside, and anybody who's been to Portland's heard of Burnside, all the streets go Burnside, then C, D, E, F in letters. Now, a lot of the Simpsons, if you're familiar with the Simpsons, Flanders, for example, that's actually from Portland. So it goes Burnside, Cooch, Davis, Everett, Flanders, Gleason, Hoyt, Irving. J is I don't remember what it is. Damn it, I start forgetting. But anyhow, in that area between all of those, Burnside up to the about Flanders, Gleason, then from 3rd Avenue all the way up to 6th Street is nothing but just homeless people camped in tents. The entire city is just full of homeless encampments on the sidewalk in front of businesses. I have huge mixed feelings about this. I do believe that there should be areas provided where they can set up their camps, but I also don't think that they should set up in front of somebody's business, and I think that's pretty disrespectful, especially when you walk by and it just smells like urine. And mind you, I'm not aggressive towards homeless people at all. I feel horrible for them. I'd love to interview them and talk about their stories, but the truth is the systems that we have are failing us, and it's not always their fault. We have a housing crisis in 2008 that just knocked people off the market. Sure, people took loans that they couldn't afford, but as there are so many factors involved in this, I don't want to get into the story because this isn't about the homeless. This is more about kids and schools, and that's what I really wanted to talk about tonight. It's really important because the school system is complete garbage. It has fallen apart so bad, and the illusion of this hard work and you get ahead and just make sure you pass your tests has always been bullshit. And so, anyhow, before I get into that, I'd like to say the video I'm talking about, I edited together a bunch of footage of me walking down the street. I bumped a guy's tent. He yelled at me from like a block away. A minute later, it was weird. It was a very interesting experience. Besides the music, the rest of it was pretty miserable. And so I put it together into a video and I posted it to go live or at least have a premiere tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Pacific time here. So that would be like, noon Eastern if you're out there. So just wanted to let people know on that. But that's what's on my mind. The horrible housing crisis, what the spray painting that I posted about Rig City, which, if you're not familiar with Portland, Portland was originally called Rip City because of the Blazers. I mean, it was also the city of roses. It was also there are a lot of different names for Portland. Okay, but in Portland, when I grew up in the Portland area, going to Milwaukee, all these different schools in Tigard, Beaverton, Hillsborough, I realized that the school system has always been complete garbage. Okay? I would really love to sit and believe that the school system is teaching kids things that they need to know. And having not only a 26-year-old, but a 9-year-old and a 12-year-old, they all go to school. And, well, not my oldest, but my youngest. But my oldest graduated, and, as far as I'm concerned, my thing about school is basic reading skills, writing skills, mathematics, arithmetic, right? I don't care about the extracurriculars, but I do care about the kids interacting with other kids. And I mostly send them to school so they can learn how to talk to other kids and people, not so they can learn geometry. But those things can benefit you. But the world's changing really quickly. Now, when I said at the beginning the systems have failed, it was a question. Have systems failed, like the school system? Or, possibly, have they succeeded? I'm not going to really go into the history of schools, but they were designed to create cookie cutter children that could go work in factories for long hours. That's why they have a bell. That's why kids, move on the bell and are taught to obey. We know all of this. But the thing is, a lot of people complain about jail, logic. I just saw a thing pop up about prison for kids. It's not really always that way. The thing is, we as a society have also adapted the schoolroom. As I was talking to my wife earlier, it's not necessarily just like the Pink Floyd version of another brick in the wall. If you haven't seen the movie The Wall, perfect representation of some of the teachers in Britain, hitting kids with rulers, and here, and still in the South, some places they have that type of punishment, corporal punishment, if you will. But the point being that uh, the school system may have been designed to create factory workers, but today we can adapt it to work for us. The thing is, the bigger question of whether school is fucked up or not is, should kids be required to go to school? And if not, what should kids learn in order to interact with the world around them? Okay? Now, this is the important parts that I wanted to cover before I get into the discussion and talking with all of you. Um, the whole idea has always been to get ahead. And this is a capitalist side effect. When we talk about capitalism, people can't help saying, well, if you don't support it, you're just a Marxist. I don't buy into that type of paradigm, but getting ahead, having more money, and keeping up with the Joneses, there's something about that ties directly into this idea of losing your inner child. It's fascinating to me that we grow up as kids, our parents laugh and giggle and watch us and take pictures of us and enjoy our presence and say, wow, I wish I was a kid again. And then all of a sudden you hit some age, some random age. It might be 12, it might be 15, 20. And your parents all of a sudden expect the world of you. oh, you're not a kid anymore. By the way, you got to go do this shit and this shit and this shit. And by the way, in a few more years, you got to get a job and go into the real world. And then all of a sudden, the parents are telling the kids how fucking miserable the world is around them. Now, I think people should stop for a minute and think about that. It's really hard on a young child to deal with that kind of circumstance, that kind of reality check, you know? And I vaguely remember myself growing up. And I'll tell you, I had to be somewhat tough. We moved around to like 8 different places. I mean, I went to 4 different grade schools and then, junior high, then 3 different high schools. At least 2 of them were alternative schools because I got kicked out of one. Then I got accepted into it, or basically the school I was at kicked me out for having a bong and then basically paid for me to go to an alternative school that was like a bus ride an hour and a half away, both ways. Then I got accepted into MLC, which was Metropolitan Learning School, like an art school. And in both of those, I got over a 3 or 3.5 GPA. Did great because I wasn't burdened by the bullshit circumstance of Lake Oswego High School. Get this grade, point average, and we don't really give a shit whether or not you do well in school. The thing is, we're not celebrating kids for who they are. This is ties directly into the video I made the other day about kids taking psychotropic drugs, kids taking benzodiazepines, kids taking pharmaceuticals of any type, including amphetamines. And I know that some can benefit, but the long-term damage could be extensive. I can't get into that right now. But um, here's a bigger question that I wanted to ask people, by the way. Are kids weaker today? Or to put it in like some non-PC term, are kids just a bunch of pussies today? You can't even say that anymore. You can't talk about anything. The beautiful segue into making the point about guys that like George Carlin and his humor, which was absurd. But more importantly, last night my wife and I watched Closer from Dave Chappelle, which was his kind of last like hurrah. I don't know. I'm sure he'll do more things, but he basically laid into everything that people had called him out on. And my wife and I, who are both liberal, tie-dye wearing hippies, can sit and laugh at Dave Chappelle and his absurd nature without feeling any animosity or hatred towards trans or gays or blacks, whites, Mexicans, anybody else. Any of the discussions that he has are so vulgar, but if I understand the context, that's what matters. And I feel like the context has been lost, and the kids of today seem extremely weak-minded. They can't handle a joke. They can't handle anything, and I feel like the victim card is being used in colleges, and now it's moving into high schools and into grade schools. So when you start talking about this, you become labeled a conservative. Oh, you must watch too much Fox News, or you must be listening to Breitbart. No, not at all. It's just my own thoughts. But when I hear it repeated from people, it's like, who's saying this? Oh, God, it's somebody I can't stand. Megyn Kelly or some right wing idiot. Everybody is out to get your attention. Everybody in the media, everybody is out trying to get you to explain to them, or let's put it this way, there are no journalists anymore in the mainstream media, so they just take stories from others. And they basically take your YouTube stories, your Facebook stories, whatever it might be, and just say, hey, look, these people are reporting, so this is our story, like we're reporting on other people's reporting because we're too lazy to really get out and do journalism because of the main point that it's pretty boring. But I'm getting off track. The point about this is that the school system is becoming weak because not just the kids are sensitive, the parents are making the kids sensitive. And look, I grew up as Gen X. I was taught that being sensitive as a man was an important value. I know how to cry, okay? I can cry at a movie. I cry more regularly than a lot of guys would probably admit. But, usually maybe, once or twice a month, maybe I watch a sad story or something and shed a tear. Sometimes I bawl, maybe once a year, but I've never had shame in it. And I think about all the guys who put this kind of militaristic attitude on it, like, no, you can't admit that you have any faults. You can't admit that you've ever cried, that you've ever shed a tear. And there are dads who teach their kids these things. But that's what we were trying to get away from, was that bullshit whip your kids with the belt attitude. So our generation was told that it's okay to show your emotions, and we did. But then all of a sudden, we realized that if you show too much emotion, you become a wuss. And that's where it got interesting. Because now, wussification, and I did make a podcast, I think, about this called Wussification of a Nation. And I don't hold back or ever regret anything I say because I see the repercussions of what's happening. The way that people are allowing people's words to hurt them. Whatever happened to sticks and stones? I mean, when there's physical violence involved, that's different. But that has to be dealt with on a case by case basis. You can't just walk around saying everybody has hate speech because they don't say what I like them to say. It's just as dumb as saying everybody says fake news, so it must be fake, if it's not something I want to hear. And until we get past this childish notion that we know best, then we'll never get anywhere. But beyond the kids being weaker today, and I think part of the implication of this, no offense to the millennials, please, or Gen Z, okay, look, kids are living at home these days after they become, quote, adults, 18, 20, 26, 27. And my wife and I were talking about this today because my son lives here and he plays in a rock band. He does other shit. He could work 2 jobs and go out and get his own place, but I know how fucked up it is out there. I know how hard it is for kids to even rent together as a group. It's very difficult. I mean, we bought our house, started paying for it rather, 17 years ago. Unfortunately, we got it when we did because we'd never be able to afford this house now. And so, yeah, kids live at home, but it's smarter. And when she said she was talking to a friend at work, and she said everybody on her block, all their kids live at home, and they're all in their 20s. But there's an embarrassment. I mean, I know people in their 30s and even 40s who live at home. But is that really such a bad thing? In other cultures, that's just a normal thing. People live in huts together in houses. The Amish, for example, the kids might leave, but they'll move back in with their parents, take care of them. It's like this cultural thing that we think that we need to leave home, bust our fucking asses for 50 hours a week, 60 hours, 80 hours. Like, people literally sit around and brag about how many hours they worked last week. Instead of bragging about how little they worked, they brag about how much they worked because that's part of what we consider a cultural value. And I think that's good if it really equates to work. But are the banker's hours more valuable than the carpenter's? Hell no. But he's making millions in bonuses and the carpenter's making nothing. And that's why there's a shortage of carpenters. So, the point that schools are still teaching the same bullshit when we have a shortage of carpenters and they've still removed shop, right? Maybe we need more mechanics. And I mean, there's no auto shop in a lot of these schools either. But they sure have enough money for football. Yeah, I hate to go there, but football to me is just a money-making garbage pit. And I don't like it. I never have. I have friends that like it. They can't understand why I don't like it. And I know some people get offended because they literally take football as their life. It's like their lifeblood, their thing. And I'm not talking about soccer. That's even worse. I mean, if I'm talking about American football, but if you're talking about football, I mean, soccer has the craziest following of hooligans who just march out in the streets and just want to fight after a game. Sports brings out the worst in people. But college is the worst yet. And it's changing, but a lot of the students couldn't get anything for their efforts. And I think that sucks. But back to the kids, at least those guys are college age and they can make a decision for themselves. But most kids these days, and this was it's pretty fucked up. Over half the kids today, when they're asked what they want to be when they grow up, they say they want to be YouTubers. Even my kids. And I say, what do you mean YouTubers? Okay, this is important. What the fuck is a YouTuber? And I think what they mean is influencer. I want to be an influencer. I want to be able to stand up and have people listen to what I say. But truth, all influencer means is you're wearing a Butterfinger sweater. That's all it means. I mean, literally, to me, like you're sitting there as a marketing gimmick. It's like NASCAR, for example. It just popped into my head. Their cars are just covered with all these sponsorships, right? So ridiculous. There's no real honesty or just integrity left in sports or anything else. All of it has always been marketing, but people like it and it sells. And so the more you can sell, the better, the more money they make. But meanwhile, we have the college kids out there who did take huge loans who are asking for a freebie, actually asking for forgiveness of loans that they took themselves, knowing the cost. Now, look, I wanted to just cover this briefly because it's important, but when it comes to school, I think we need to improve how we deal with the education system. But giving trillions of dollars to people who took loans, whatever kind of loan it might be, knowing the cost of a school loan, I don't think that that's fair. Even if you gave everybody else free college, which that would have to, hey, everybody just go back to college. I don't think it's going to solve the problem that we have of the crisis we have, which is causing the young people to get so fucking upset right now about everything because the world is fucked and they have nothing to look forward to. And that's kind of the point I'm getting at. Slowly. That's why kids want to be YouTubers. They want to make quick money. They want to get the fuck out because how would you blame them? Nobody's going to work a 9 to 5 job anymore for the rest of their life unless it's something that's different or makes tips or makes extra good money or they have great, there are plenty of jobs like that that work for people, but there's not enough for everyone. And the idea that Americans can start their own business and do whatever they want or be whatever they want, we know that's a facade. The fact is people have to do the best they can. And, this is why people end up selling drugs. I mean, obviously, you make a lot of money. It's always in demand. It's easy, and there's not a lot of competition if, compared to a lot of other businesses. If you're good at what you do in anything, you can make some good money, but a lot of people just don't want to do that or take that route. So being an influencer is a way to get quick money for people. But honestly, here I am as a 10-year YouTuber that has pretty much failed at any attempt to market myself. But other than like my Kratom business, there's not a lot I've really used YouTube for to make money. I've never had merchandise or really used ads, but I wanted to just note the idea of kids wanting to be YouTubers and, influencers. It's no different than the old rock star wannabe bullshit. When my brother and I were young, I remember when he got his first guitar, had a little built-in speaker on it, his first electric guitar. He'd rock that thing. We even spray painted it. One time he come running out with my friend and I. We were 3 years older, like 15. He's like 12 or something, and he was gonna play us a song, and he runs out in the garage and he goes, "A one, a two," and then it falls off the strap, and just goes twang. And he was so embarrassed he ran off. It was hilarious. My brother's awesome. He's a good guy. He plays guitar like a maniac. The point was that was when he was like 11 or 12, and now he's 40, and he's a fucking amazing guitarist. It's like people dedicate themselves to something and they're good at something. And I don't know. I know it's not school's job to teach those things, but even in some of the classes they teach for like music are just boring. My kid wanted to play, what was it? Yeah, he wanted to play the horns, but specifically he wanted to play trombone, and I tried to get him to stick with it, and he just wouldn't do it. So, it's kind of like, as I said, It's like when kids wanted to be rock stars or Hollywood, but now there's no agent, so there's no middleman, and people are able to just kind of do whatever they want. And it makes it good for some, but bad for others because making millions of dollars overnight can be amazing. But as you can see, people like Logan Paul, basically in the end, after you've burned out all of your YouTube shit, you just become a boxer. That's what they all do. So, I think the point I really want to make on that before I move forward here is that society celebrates wealth, but not true wealth. I should say society celebrates money and power and fame. I still find it disgusting in this day and age. Even though I grew up in the 90s where people were bragging about their fur coats and their diamond rings, still rap doing the same shit. It's unbelievable. Like some of the music out there, or rap and music, that's just so shallow. Pop music, talking about, you know, it's always the same shit. Sex and drugs, getting it on, being a pimp when it comes to rap, or when it comes to pop, it's all about love, but it's the same old shit, the same formula over and over and over. And that's another system that's failed. Everything gets too big, and it all has a short shelf life, and celebrities have a short shelf life. And I think it's just a bunch of disgusting fucking nonsense that we live in. On a side note, before I forget, as I watched a great little short documentary today about, he's a well-known, him and his wife are actually animators. They make cartoons, animations, and they've done a lot of commercials, things like that. But the particular show I watched was about a movie, a full-length feature film doing like stop motion animation using these amazing cutouts, which they move and articulate the mouths and everything. 40 years they've been working on it, and they know they won't finish it because they're like 80. But the point was, there was a little part where they said that Disney had complained because, and wondered why they didn't get recognized for Snow White or something else. I'm like, are you guys kidding? These people were voted as like the best animators in the world, and you've never heard of them. And the point to that is that so many kids out there, they want to be noticed. They want to be recognized by everyone, not realizing that you plant a seed and that tree grows slowly. The best fruits are reaped at the very end of the season, and whether you reap those or not depends. But eventually, if you really want to be remembered for something great, it might take time, and you might never know it happened. But it's important that we are that humble. I feel like we're going through some massive changes right now as a society, but I've been feeling that way for a long time. And I feel like we've been kept divided because we all know this, obviously, but because unity between the people challenges power, and power is a controller of everything absolutely right now. We have governmental institutions that are telling you what you cannot do with your body and what you're forced to do. We have corporations which can basically dictate how policies go for the workplace, for home life, for how houses are built if it benefits them, building in flood zones if they can buy off the right contractors as well as the right city officials. We live in a really fucked up, corrupt world, and I've realized this. I've been trying to identify how to deal with it, and I don't think there is a way. But I know this for a fact. We live in such a corrupt, fucked up world because the systems we live in are too complex. And I wanted to call it like the washer or the dryer syndrome. I have a really old 80s Maytag dryer. Or I think it's maybe a GE. Wait, I don't even know. It's a very simple, it's a Roper. That's right. I think it's, yeah, Maytag Roper. That dryer is not, I've had newer models with all these touch pads, had problems constantly with a lot of them, as well as a washer. Ended up buying an old washer and dryer, fix that shit myself. You ever take a dryer apart? It's just a drum, heating element, pumps the air out, boom, done. A little motor, right? And a pulley. So you've got this very simple concept. You can fix it yourself, you can repair it. But the more complex the machine gets, the more they add a bunch of extra pulleys and a super sensors and all these different things that shut down the whole system. One little fuck up on a computer chip just shuts down your whole goddamn dryer and there's nothing to use. If mine goes out, I I could buy a little thermostat. I buy like a 10 pack of them, pop one in there, good to go. Bypass it, whatever you need to do. And I want to say that that's exactly how I see society. Too many fucking chips in society, too many components to it. And that's why, you know, the police forces fall apart, the military falls apart, government itself falls apart. And that's why we're living in this fucked up world. And in order to get people to fall in line, they just convince people that liberals are all the problem or that conservatives are all the problem. And on the argument goes, and another 4 years goes by, and people don't ever take back their own fucking lives. So I'm going to make sure my thing's plugged in here. And I'm going to say hello to everybody before I continue. I don't know how many comments I have. So hello, Logic. I saw you on there. Hey, Logan. It's good to see you, too. Watching Fight Club, he says. That's awesome. I haven't seen that in a long time. Hello, Dan. Logic, you taught in elementary school, huh? I didn't realize that. That's pretty. That's hardcore, man. It really is. Logic says kids need to understand where people are coming from and really need to learn something like a skill or ability. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was saying earlier. I love carpentry. I mean, I learned carpentry working in carpentry, but I started out as a roofer. I had somebody who wanted to teach me some basic trades, doing foundations, small additions in the rain. I could do anything. I was brutal. I mean, working in the Oregon winters, doing tear-offs on like 45-degree slopes on tile roofs that were completely covered in moss, or shake roofs, which shake is just wood. Mind you, we live in the Northwest where it's under pine needles and resins that you just slide down that shit. Uh, yeah, I've seen some people get fucked up, and I've slid a few times myself, but we get that shit done, and it taught me some humility. And I think that's what a lot of the kids are missing today, is that fucking humility, being able to say, I did something hardcore. I went out in the rain, even though it was raining, you know. We've become weak and passive, and we use this victim status sometimes to get away with it. It's very weird, strange time to be alive. Sorry, I'm way behind on the comments, but I'm just flipping through them right here. You got suspended for wearing slippers, huh? Yeah, I'll tell you this. Actually, I mentioned this before, but when I was in high school, when I first got to high school, I graduated in 94, or would have with enough credits. So it was 1990, 89, 90 year. So I got there in 89 or 90, and I guess it would have been late 89 as a freshman. And they had a smoking lounge at the high school. So we could actually walk in and smoke. And we were freshmen, so we weren't 18. Technically, you had to be 18. The teachers would come out and they'd try to like stop us, but we'd sneak up into the woods sometimes and smoke bowls. And somebody mentioned it was almost like those woods were just designed for us to go up there. Like they knew, like they wanted us to. It was so perfect. It was like right behind the art center and the pottery area. There's just this brick wall and then this trail up into the woods, and we'd smoke pot and run off from the teachers and go to Swifties, which was a store like right down there with these Asian people that would sell us beer. Those were the good old days. And yeah, we got into trouble sometimes, but you know what? It's a good memory, and we turned into decent people. It's almost like we're afraid to let kids be, rebels anymore. And they're going to rebel no matter what, no matter what. Somebody asked how long I've been live. I don't know, 20 minutes or so. All right, Alex Hall, good to see you, my friend. He says, I'm doing ketamine therapy, had my second dose on Friday. Oh, wow. He's wondering if Kratom can affect the ketamine benefits. That I cannot say, my friend. I've been hanging on to some for a couple of years, probably like 5 years now. I've never tried it. I've had friends tell me I'll love it, and I probably would, but I don't want to snort it, and I don't inject anything, so I'm kind of stuck between worlds there. But I have heard that ketamine therapy is phenomenal for depression and can help people immensely. I definitely wanted to do a video about that, and I might do it in the future. I think I have one on YouTube, unless they deleted it, but it might be on my Patreon, wink wink. But I actually have a bunch of psychedelic videos on there, and I mentioned this, but ketamine has, really been shown to be successful in the right doses if you're under the right therapy regimen. But that's no different than psilocybin, any psychedelic, LSD. And I think people get the dose wrong sometimes with all these substances, and that's why it's important to have a sitter and an expert. You need an expert. So, yeah. Adam says kratom may increase serotonin. Yeah, it's possible. It's such an interesting substance. The way that kratom works, it doesn't. What it doesn't do is excite. I guess what it's called is beta arrestin. Beta arrestin turns out to be this enzyme, I guess, that is activated, or maybe it's a hormone, enzyme, whatever, that's activated when you take opiates, which is what shuts down your breathing and causes people to die from respiratory depression, which does not happen with kratom, which is why kratom right now is under threat, in case anybody's aware. Again, that this month the FDA is trying to take kratom to the World Health Organization to get it banned internationally through many different channels, because the U.S. back in 2016, when they tried to ban it and make it a Schedule 1 drug, we basically fought back. We had, you know, thousands, 100 something thousand signatures on the petition, as well as 51 Congress and senators that sent in their recommendation to leave it alone. So they did for years. So now they don't even have to really get public opinion. I know the AKA and other groups have mentioned that they're taking public opinion. They're going to give it to the FDA. FDA don't give a fuck about your opinion. I'm sorry to say this. No government agency cares about your opinion as an American. It's local agencies, maybe, but we got to be real here. And especially not the FDA. They get 70% of their funding from pharmaceutical drugs that they approve. It's a complete, conflict of interest there. And 9 out of the last 10 heads of the FDA all worked for pharmaceutical companies. 9 out of 10. And went back to work for them, a lot of them as well afterwards. Merck, the last one worked for Pfizer. Scott Gottlieb, he's still talking about it. So, that's another topic altogether. But we're living in some really weird times. And our own emotions are being used against us by like all these different media outlets, and people are becoming bitter, pissed off. You know what I mean? I'm going to take a break and sit back for a second here. I might not last very long because it's, what, 12:31 here? I don't even know. But I'm tired. As I mentioned, my hands are dirty because I did tie-dyeing. And yesterday going to Portland and seeing all that depressing shit down there was pretty lame. The place is really falling apart. And I guess maybe that's another angle to this. The kids' schools are falling apart. And the area around their schools are falling apart. They see homelessness. They see people who they used to look up to, the high schoolers or the college kids who'd come in and say, hey, get a good education. You could come work here in this new business, whether it's IT or something else. And now it's just drowned out with the sound and hum of machines. And I'm not talking about just automation, but that's a huge part of it. And for all the businesses that still do require labor, a lot of these employers have just converted to shorter wages, less hours, so they don't have to pay them the extra overhead. This includes people who work for Amazon, and you know, we've got these multi-billionaires who are flying their rockets into space. And I know I mentioned the other day that I'm not a big fan of Elon Musk. I know people think of him as a genius, but some of the shit he's texted, calling some guy in South America a pedo because he questioned Elon wanting to send a submarine to rescue some kid. It was just some weird times. He's just said some weird shit. And I'm like, that's okay. I can let that go. And I've watched his Joe Rogan interviews, and I'm like, okay, I can let some of his weird shit go. And then he wants to go to Mars, and then I start listening. I'm like, okay, I can kind of let this go. And then at a point, I'm just like, okay, he's just another rich billionaire idiot that just wants to drill holes through the earth and go to space. There's no real resolution. He hates mass transit. He doesn't want buses in those tunnels. He wants to drive cars in those tunnels. I'm just, we live in a world of morons, and I'm one of them, so I get that. I can admit this shit. But these people who have the money don't admit that they're morons, and people celebrate this shit. And meanwhile, the proletariat gets poorer and poorer and poorer. And you might be one of them. Maybe you're even doing well. Maybe you're making, 40 grand, 50 grand, 60 grand, 100 grand, 200 grand a year. Who knows? I have no idea what other people make. I personally don't make shit right now, but I'd like to make decent money again. And there were times when being a carpenter could bring in some good cash, but now it's like they're dying for carpenters because they never paid the carpenter fair enough for long enough. And the money keeps going to these people who don't deserve it. And that's my opinion, of course. Not a lot of people agree with that, but um, Logic says Marxism is starting to become obvious. Well, I don't know. I mean, not as a solution, because the thing is, we got to find a solution that everyone will take. I don't believe that we have to leave out all terms like, first off, authoritarianism, we've got to ditch it. Marxism, we've got to ditch it. Um, Communism, socialism, all these things have to be abandoned as terms, as words, because the word is so polluted and convoluted, twisted up and wrung out like a goddamn. It's horrible, man. I mean, the way that we've dealt with words right now is what's got people, like I said earlier about Dave Chappelle, like, love watching that shit, but also I just think about all the people who just cringe and get angry, and I think it's words, man. Words, baby. It's all words. You've got to let comedy go. You've got to let people's jokes go without taking things too personal. And but anyway, back to the point being about Marxism and socialism and all this is that there's so much hatred towards different groups and towards enemies that we don't really have, that we're constantly fighting about things we don't even really know if there's an argument there. Like, how many times have you had a debate with somebody, whether it be online or in person, and you might not be the kind of person who confronts others or does that, but I do. If I hear bullshit, I call it out. I can't help it. I'm sorry. And I get my bullshit called out as well. That's fine. But I call something out, and people go into the ad hominem attacks and they start totally deflecting and taking it somewhere else, not really dealing with the situation or the discussion. But once in a while, you get this kind of enlightening, ah, this aha moment and awareness. The Aristotelian argument, the original argument that was meant to bring forth truth for you as well as them. And, you know, today, instead of having an argument where both people might even be insulted, hell, might even come to blows. Like I said, when I was a kid, I had a few fist fights. I don't support them, but it is what it is. If you want to have it and you feel you need it, it can help some boys. Let it be. But it's got so bad that people are hiding under this victimhood umbrella constantly. Like, a person gets their ass kicked and they say, well, it's because I was A or B or C, rather than just taking a good ass whooping. People don't like each other. It doesn't always mean it's a hate crime, right? But sometimes it is. So it makes it a very complicated endeavor when we're talking about those things. But um, when it comes to kids or younger people seeing these things, we end up with these little entitled groups like those Antifa douchebags or people who claim to be Antifa running around with hoods on in Portland. Look, when I went down there, I've seen these kids running around breaking shit. They don't represent the whole crowd, but they also don't really represent anything. They just basically anarchists. I mean, I grew up in Portland. I've seen plenty of them. Anybody can put on a uniform or dress in all black. So it's more of like this entitlement that a lot of these people have because you'd think that they're angry because the system has screwed them over. But you find out a lot of them are trust fund babies and their parents have a bunch of cash and they're just running around breaking shit because they're mad at mommy and daddy. Not all of them. Some of them are just street punks who really don't want to be responsible or do anything with their lives or try to, be part of society, which is fine. I have nothing opposed to people who don't want to be part of a society. But if you're going to live in that society, like let's say on the streets or right downtown, right in that area, I would think you would want to participate somewhat. Even when I was walking in Portland, I saw a bunch of people sweeping up their campsite on the sidewalk, sweeping up garbage. I mean, I respect that. I'm not, harshing on anyone. It's just we have to live up to certain standards, right, as individuals. And so a lot of the young kids have really been entitled for way too long. And I think, as I said before, it's kind of a direct response to the fact that so many kids in the past, kids in my generation, Gen X, right? And my mom's generation, the boomers, they, maybe had it a little too rough or maybe too easy for me because my mom had it too rough, for example. I mean, my brother and I pretty much did anything we wanted. I mean, we ran around like hoodlums, but it was a different time. It was the 80s, and that's from the time I was like, 10 years old, I just ran around like a nutcase, and that was in 85. So, you know. But at any rate, this has been a long podcast and a long discussion. I might upload this as a podcast. We'll see. I do want to leave on a few final notes, and then I'll have discussion and answer any questions. If any of you have questions, you've got 10, 15 minutes to post them, and I'll try to answer anything anybody has. But I don't hold it against kids that they live at home today or that they're broke. And I don't also do not support free college, as I said before, but I do support, or I should say, I don't support reimbursement for college, but I do support free college if it's local. I would support a bill that would give all college kids tuition for community colleges they went to. I don't want to pay back kids who went to Harvard or Yale, and those colleges are just bullshit to me. You want to learn to be prestigious, you pay the prestigious wages. So, that aside, um, being an influencer is not the solution, but most kids that want to be YouTubers are just the same as anybody else who wanted to be in Hollywood or be a musician or a rock star. And the rock star and the actor world has changed as well because people can just do their own YouTube videos and they can upload their own bands to Bandcamp. They can upload their music to Spotify or anywhere else. Hell, I have my podcast on Spotify. I got it on Apple. I got it on all the main platforms. I mean, things have changed heavily. And that's, by the way, 15-minute free thinking is the podcast. And it's a good one, I think. But that's me because it's my podcast. Of course I like it. So, what else did I want to cover here? I should cover this thing that came in the mail because it's part of an upcoming discussion I was going to have. As you can see, there's a lion with these big blue wings, and then there's Jesus on a horse, and what is that, a golem or some shit? No, it looks like a two-headed winged dog and some sort of a demon or something. And then there's a bear down here with a fish. I don't know what the bear's doing with the fish. Oh, cheetahs. It says amazing prophecies for today. Everything is about to change. And I wanted to sum up with this because I think it was, I don't know, kind of related to where kids, the kind of bullshit that I really thought that our society would overcome, but it's just a continuation, coming door to door, coming to Vancouver, and I'm thinking about going to this. I'm thinking about dressing nice with a nice slacks and a nice shirt, comb my hair nice, maybe put it under a hat, then wear my GoPro in a pocket with a little cutout, just be totally inconspicuous and act like a nerd and go to this thing because God, I mean, inside this God, it's got like this thing with this, the dome, and then it's got these helicopters flying in. It's like this apocalypse shit. Bible prophecy for today. And it says, Bible prophecy predicts the rise and fall of nations up to 2,000 years into the future. Then a new world order is prophesied as the last government on earth. Is it already here? So there's a 4-day thing. Saturday, there's part 1 is prophecies, great conflict. And then it talks about pandemics and prophecies predict an impending doom that we've never seen before. How can we survive? Then the same day, there's another one called Revelation's Rapture. It talks about Matthew 24 and saying that millions of Christians will be lost. The next one, prophecy reveals Satan's final deceit. Then the next one says Revelation's Lake of Fire. Then it says, where is hell located? Who is in charge of it? And what is its population? The mystery can be solved. And the final one is great. Friday, October 22nd, 6 o'clock p.m. Revelation's Bottomless Pit. It says, John, the Revelator, was given a 1,000-year prophecy that would solve the greatest dilemma this universe has ever experienced. Come as we unlock the secret. Yeah, the greatest secret that the universe has ever experienced. Come and we're going to unlock the secret. We're just going to come down here. And then it talks about USA in the Bible, the Antichrist, Mark of the Beast, and then the unpardonable sin. It's Jehovah's Witnesses probably. It's got Kim Jong-un on the back along with Putin and the Pope and a horrible picture of Biden. But then again, every picture of Biden's horrible. Yeah. It says all seats are free, but the best are reserved. So I'm really tempted to kind of go in there and just like go online and reserve my seats. Go in there looking all pro style. It'd be pretty tight, y'all. I mean, really, think about it. I mean, I've gone undercover with my GoPro talking to Christians before. They don't seem to mind. I've wanted to interview them, but I don't feel like the ones who want to be interviewed are pompous as shit. But then there's a part of me that says I'm pompous as shit too. Why do I want to interview them about something that I already know what I believe too? But maybe I'm just hoping for some sort of a better debate, because it's not because I want to believe or get them to believe. It's because I'm fascinated with why people believe what they believe. The fact that people really believe in hell. And probably some of you believe in hell. And I hope you won't just click off because I said that, because that would be triggering yourself. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I don't believe in hell. You may. If truly it's eternity and you go to heaven and I go to hell, that's so be it. Fine. That's cool. And I think religion's important to talk about, because also when I said about schools and how fucked up they are, a lot of the reasons why some people hate schools so much is not because the schools themselves are so bad or the teachers are so bad, but often because they're not teaching what they believe is important. Some people say it's religion. Some people say it's secularism or non-religion. And some people in between say, we wouldn't mind just kids learning some values. And hey, to me, I think that the parents should be teaching their kids values. That's my opinion. But who am I? Just a parent. Boop, 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 boop. Huh, Logic said something about intentional communities. I actually made a video about that a couple weeks back. It's pretty fascinating. The idea that, I always mention this to people, that I think that the one downfall of intentional communities is that there's always one guy whose intention is to freeload off of everybody else. That's a tough one. Hell, it might be me. Who knows? Uh, Thanks, Alex. I appreciate the kind words. Huh. Logic says, sometimes I get to thinking that Catholicism is right when I recognize that what can be recognized as evil is obviously incorporated into the philosophy of those with power. It gets you thinking, I don't believe in hell. Well, Catholicism, that's a completely different story. Those guys, my mother in law was a Catholic. My parents weren't religious, but my dad, on his dog tags, had this LDS, like Latter day Saints, because I guess his parents tried out different religions, and I guess they tried out Mormonism for a while, right around the time when he joined the military. So he just threw it on the dog tags, but it's always kind of been funny to me. Uh, my parents weren't into it, but Michelle, my wife, her mom, and her whole family was, and I think her brothers and sisters went to Catholic school. Michelle didn't, my wife. I don't know if she was the first sibling not to or what, but she uh, she never really took it seriously. I don't think her dad ever took it that seriously, but the way that her mom tried to hang on to Catholicism, even when she met me, and I met Michelle when she was like 23, right? We were like young, and whenever she'd be like, "Oh, Josh, you should come to church. You should come to Sunday service," and I'm like, "Eh, nah, I don't really want to do the God thing." I don't know. She didn't get it, but she got it. You know what I mean? Like she was older, and she's 80 or so now. So but she's so funny. She's not dumb. She's not just a blank-headed like I just believe blindly in religion. The point I want to make is that there's part of her that's kind of like, I know that I believe this because it helps me. But yeah, it is what it is. I just kind of do it because my mom did it and her mom did it. And I feel like that's where religion is really going right now. That it's going to not disappear. It's not like secularists are going to come in and just dominate religion and go, ha ha, atheism is the way. Atheism in itself, anybody who's a self defined atheist who goes out and seeks atheist discussion, I think will eventually find out that it's a complete waste of time. It goes nowhere, makes you miserable, and you're not going to change anybody's mind. So, mostly the only point is people to go out and troll and harass other people and say, look at you dumb people who believe in God. And look, I get it. I've thrown Bibles out of windows onto highways. I've trashed them, rolled joints out of them. I've laughed at God. I've flipped off Jesus when people, have any like fear of God or Jesus or you're going to get in trouble. I'll just be like, fuck God. Because God to me is everything. I don't have any personal offense. Like, I don't feel like God is a being that's like waiting for me to fuck up. I feel like God, if God exists, is everything. But at the same time, if it's a consciousness, it's the kind of consciousness that goes, fuck you too, Carpo, you asshole. That's my God. And that may be ridiculous, but that's how I feel about it, you know? God is a broomstick. Ian says, or Carlo, hey Carlo, he says, you still take Kratom? Yes, I do. I do still take Kratom. I've been taking Kratom longer than anyone I know, like 11 years. First time I tried Kratom was like July of 2009, and I still have the receipt from it from Bouncing Bear Botanicals. And I cleaned my whole garage just right across the wall where I'm at right now. Amazing experience. Uh, really fell in love with the plant. 11 years later, I'm still trying to find a reason to want to quit it. I became a vendor after 5 years, so I've been doing that for 5 years on the side, but I'm kind of trying to move into something different, and it's really hard because I don't know what to do. So I still am doing the crate thing for now, but yeah, I enjoy it. Even funny thing is, I took kratom before I had pain, heavy physical pain. I mean, I'd had it before, but my sciatica kicked in after like 2011 or so, 12, maybe 13 actually. So it was like 4 years after I started taking it, and man, it saved my ass. Literally, since the sciatic nerve goes down past my ass. At any rate, yeah, that was a horrible time in my life. Really horrible time. Logic says, Carpo, do you know about why these wildly successful Catholic communes? I made a video about it. God is everything, and God is everything is God. Yeah. Well, no, I didn't see that actually. I've done a video about intentional communities, like I said, a couple weeks back, and the discussion. I guess I didn't get too much into depth because I've done one in the past. Um, as I read in the previous comment, you said that yeah, people need to pull their weight. It's true, but some people end up pulling their weight for a while, then shit happens. In that case, somebody has to kick them out, and it becomes physical sometimes. That means the point being that you can make it work. Of course, it can work fine, but somebody at some point will have to get physical and perhaps violent. And that's the thing, as long as it's not a hippie type community. Look, it's funny because that ties right into what I really wanted to talk about. I wanted to make a video earlier saying that hippies are violent. Hippies are violent as shit. They're fucking like hardcore sometimes. I've seen dudes in full tie dyes and full hippie garb and dreadlocks just wailing and beating the shit out of each other, or even fucking pulling out guns and knives and stuff. There's so many stories that you'll hear about on the parking lots and on the streets. People who, what you might think of as a hippie, if you will. And I'm not talking about just the ragtag fucking rat packs. Like, there's some really raggedy people out there. I'm talking about like the hippies, um, because in the subculture there's a lot of drugs, and so in the commune lifestyle there's a lot of people who kind of want to get away from society's rules, meaning that when you have a problem you can't deal with society's rules. You can't go by society's rules. Calling the cops is always a bad idea when you have a commune, so you've got to make sure you can maintain your shit. I would love to do it with a small group of people, and I've actually talked with a couple people saying if we all contributed, enough money, like 50 grand each, right? You could buy you can buy acres for $1,000 an acre or less in Kentucky and stuff, and we found places that are pretty reasonable. I mean, you buy like 500 acres, you have five people go in 100 grand each, right? And sell their places wherever they live and buy it outright, like 500 acres. Set up the plots ahead of time, make sure the people are doing their own thing. Everybody's got their own property to farm and do their own thing on, but at the same time, you've got like a main community area. But you got to trust the people. That's the hard part. But anyway, yeah, it's yeah, logic. Do an interview, huh? I might want to do an interview with you, brother. Yeah, like I've had a couple people that wanted to do an interview, and I've actually wanted to bring people on to the podcast, but I'm a little awkward, and I'm still learning how to interview. Like my friend Traveler will come over, Joel, and he'll say, "Let's do a podcast," but in reality, we're both drinking, and I'm like, I want to keep it straight up. If I'm doing a real podcast where I'm doing interviews, I want to set up both microphones, and I finally have a setup for that, with an audio box that's connected to a setup where I could do a live broadcast, I think. But I'm gonna have to experiment a bit. I don't have a good computer or a good camera right now, or a good way to interview. My brother wanted me to interview him, and I told him like, "Hey, well, what topic?" He's like, "Oh, anything." And we couldn't, I was like, I need a topic. Like, I need to have a discussion that I could actually have. So if you want to do that, let me know. Email me, and maybe we could figure out a particular topic that we could both research. You know what would be cool? This is, I don't know, kind of off the cuff here, but a show that's somewhat called something like Devil's Advocate, to where two people who actually don't usually argue or really have an opinion much on, either side, purposefully research something trying to prove that it's good or bad. So I would go out and I would research like a spiritual practice and say, this is why I think that chakras are bullshit. And you'd say, this is why I think they're real. And I've seen shows like that, but also studies that were done, and there's so much that can come of that, especially when the two researchers go and research actually the opposite of what they truly believe. So I'd be studying to try to prove something that I really already don't believe, because there's always going to be bias included. We know this. But anyhow, I think that the reason I haven't interviewed more people is not because I feel like they're not worthy of being interviewed. It's my own awkwardness. Like it's hard for me to figure out, well, what kind of questions should I ask. About a year ago, I'm just going to say a year because it probably wasn't even that long, but I was interviewed for a podcast called 13 Questions. And a lot of you might have seen that. If you haven't, there's a link somewhere. I'll share it with you if you want it. But it's these guys they ask other guys 13 questions about what it means to be a man. And I was like really honored to be on there. And they're like, somebody recommended me, one of my friends on YouTube, one of my subscribers, I think. And so, yeah, we did the show. Then there's like a bonus 10 questions or something. And it's a pretty good podcast and they do a great show. I just wanted to plug their show here because if you're a man, a young man especially, or an older man, it doesn't matter, looking for direction, trying to figure out what the life's all about, that show's great because it shows what other guys think. And to me, it's like going into philosophy and learning about different philosophers. And if you sign up with the code CARPO, you get 3 weeks free. No, I'm totally joking. Actually, I realized that started to sound like a commercial. I have no vested interest in any of that shit or the channel or anything else. Um, I just like to share stuff that I find. So, I would like to bid you all adieu. I think it's time for me to go to bed. I'm going to take another bong hit real quick because I got this weed. Oh, this is the Durban Poison right here. It's a pure sativa. It's one of the last pure sativas that's indica like. It smells kind of like candy and like licorice. And it's 28.2%, which I don't really believe. Oh, but I used to grow this stuff outdoors and indoors too. And it literally is like the exact same smell, the same terpene profile as the stuff I grew. Durban Poison is a very distinct smell. And I used to grow this stuff called White Shark that was basically the same kind of thing. And it was amazing. Amazing weed. Anyway, I need to take a quick break. And then I'll be right back to say goodbye. So for some final words. See, if I don't smoke on camera, then I don't have any issues. It really sucks. When I first started my channel on YouTube, I used to smoke and sit in this very room. And I actually had a little grow area and my medical card. And I would sit here and trim weed and record it and talk about cannabis. And it was a great channel. In fact, that channel probably would have done so well if YouTube hadn't decided to completely screw me over, prevent me from talking about anything remotely controversial. At any rate, it's pretty late already, and I started this podcast around midnight, which means that, yeah, if you live on the East Coast, it's probably already 4 in the morning, and if Daniel's still out there, it's probably fucking 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 more in the morning. I wanted to say that when I went to the weed store to buy this, it said Durban Poison, and then the other one I chose was a half ounce of UK cheese. And it's funny, when I bought it, the guy's like, "Oh, you got stuff from all around the world here." Because I also got some haze extract. So it's like you got South America, you got the Durban Poison from Durban, South Africa, and then you got the UK cheese from the UK. I want to respect to Daniel. I think Daniel's from the UK, right? But the UK has some of the world's fucking best weed. I hate to say that because it's like, I know that Holland grows great weed. I know that the honestly the very best cannabis in the world comes from the Emerald Triangle. Humboldt, Mendocino, and what's the other county? Up in Northern California, is it Shasta County? At any rate, all these three places where the cannabis is the best has to do with altitude. It has to do with how the plants sit up in higher altitude above the frost line, so they can sit out longer and they get more UV light. They're like the most resinous, amazing sticky buds down there. But being world renowned, that stuff doesn't even end up in the stores, I'm telling you. Point being, I know this stuff was probably grown indoors, and it's pretty good stuff. It's good Durban Poison. It tastes great, and I know indoors, weed can be phenomenal. But there's also part of me that realizes that the best cannabis I've had in my life is from the outdoors. This stuff I used to grow called, well, somebody sent me some Thai seeds. One of my subscribers on YouTube, his name's John, and he told me that one of his friends from Vietnam had gone through a drawer and he'd found all these Thai seeds from he brought back from Vietnam. And I was like, dude, I got to get some of these. And he's like, well, I can get some from him and I'll send them to you. And he did. He mailed them to me in an envelope. I got them and I was like, holy shit. These are literally seeds from 1960 fucking 9. It's like, what do I do? So I sprouted there was like 20 and I think I sprouted like 5. And I sprouted another 5 later. But I grew some of these plants up, found a female, and then I crossbred it with a male from a different strain. But then these plants were Thai, so they last a long time in bloom. I had to grow them indoors. It didn't work out because they're so big and lanky. Then they started growing male flowers on them, and I had hermaphrodites, and then I ended up getting the seeds mixed up. But the point I wanted to make is some of the best cannabis I had in my life looked like dirtweed, Mexican. It was something a friend of mine, whoops, I knew that would go out. A friend of mine gave to me. It was a cannabis that was from his grandfather, and I just met the kid at school, and he's like, "Hey man, you want some? Do you like weed?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then the next day, he just brings me like an eighth of this weed, and he just drops it in front of me on the desk as he's going into school. It's like, okay, thanks. After school, I went home to the park with my friends, pulled it out, and it was like brickweed. If you're not familiar with brickweed, it's imprinted with itself. In other words, brick Mexican brickweed would be so bricked up that even when you had the seeds out, there were like these little divots where the seeds used to be because it had been compressed so much. And over time, the shit would dry out so bad it had no smell, no flavor. It was horrible and it'd crackle. But this stuff didn't have any seeds in it, and it didn't really have any stems, but it still looked like brickweed. It was brown. So I was like, okay, I carefully pulled off a chunk at the park. I smell it. I'm like, it doesn't really smell like anything. So I loaded a bowl with my friend. I smoked, took a couple tokes, we passed it around, and I remember walking out of the woods, looking at my friend, going, "What the fuck, dude?" I was like, "Holy shit!" Fast forward like months down the line, him and I were good friends. We used to hang out. His grandfather was a dealer, hardcore, old school. These guys were Sicilian, like they're fucking Italians, and he was like probably some mob dude, but he had this chest just full of weed, killer, fucking weed, but you wouldn't know it by the smell and the looks, and this stuff would blow your mind. And I realized it was probably imported from Thailand. There were no seeds. It was imported from one of these, either South America or it was somewhere where it was grown as sinsemilla, so it definitely wasn't shitweed. And holy cow, this stuff kicked my ass. So looks can be extremely deceiving. And then like this stuff, for example, it looks phenomenal. I mean, it really does. It's very crystally. Says it's like 30%, which we all know it's not. But, and I'm sorry for those of you who aren't stoners, but A lot of people think that when people smoke weed, they just fall asleep. Truth is, I've been sitting smoking and smoking and smoking, and I haven't fallen asleep yet, so that's not the truth. I'm going to hold out for a minute. I'm going to say goodbye to everybody for a second. Oh, hey, Lorna. Lorna's on here. It's good to see you. And see, Lorna's from Scotland, so it's probably morning for her. Okay, since Lorna's on here, good night, Alex. Good morning, Adam. Okay, it's 9 a.m. here in Scotland, she says. That's so awesome. It's so good to hear. So I wanted to show you guys this since Lorna's here. Because I don't believe anything's by chance. And Lorna sent me this. Actually, she sent it and said it was for my wife, which is awesome because we both love it. Lorna's from Scotland, and she's an artist, and she makes these little dolls. Okay, so check this box out. It came in the box, okay? Open it up. I have it sitting right on the blanket, so I've got to be very careful. I don't want to break this. Lorna makes these little dolls and has these little knitted blankets for them, right? They're little babies. You can't see it, so I have to take it out. And they have these little blankets with the little hat. Sorry for anybody who's listening to the podcast, you won't be able to see it. But if I could get this light turned away, these things, I was just blown away. I'm going to try to get it focused in here. At any rate, that's the best I can do right now. This little, because that's live, so it's all screwed up. It's got little hairs on it and everything. So it's a little baby that is made out of basically Sculpey clay or Fimo clay, any one of these, types of clay. It's basically polymer clay, and I make the same stuff with beads, but this right here is another level. This shit is like beyond epic, and the quality and attention to detail is just so amazing, and I love it. And I haven't named her yet. I'm gonna let my wife name her because my wife deserves a daughter after having to deal with my sorry ass, as well as her oldest son and 2 other sons, and there are no females in our house, so she'll grow up to be big and small. And on a side note, I made a joke about that with a friend I was talking, and I was saying, he was like, oh, it looks out of proportion, and I said something to the effect of, well, actually, it looks pretty damn close to me, to a baby. I think he misunderstood me and I think he was talking about the actual size. And he's like, no, I've seen a baby, dude. That's way too small. And I thought about it for a minute, and I sent him a message. I was like, I get the feeling you're talking about the actual size of the baby and not the actual proportions. He's like, yeah, I'm talking about the size. I was like, no, there are no babies that are 2 inches long. Well, they're born very premature, but that's a different story. But anyhow, I'm rambling. Thank you, Lorna. That's a very cool gift. And everybody who's sent me these gifts, dude. People have sent me some awesome shit. Kendra has sent me some woofers lately, and people are awesome. Yeah. So thank you, Lorna. And what am I smoking on, Carpool? This is just my vape. Nothing big, but I've got some Durban Poison over there with some haze extract on it, and then some UK cheese in the house. And they're all pretty stony. The truth is, I smoke sativas in the daytime if I can, and it really does make a difference. It really does. See, everybody knows that if I do a live cast at night, I'm not the Carpo that's that's like focused in making a video. I'm the Carpo that's stoned and rambling. And that's okay too. I mean, you can't always be a guy that people think you are. That's how it is. Glad it arrived safely. Me too, Lorna. That was a long trip. My wife, it's just funny you came on here because my wife just like an hour ago, well, 3 hours ago, she goes, "What's that girl?" She goes, "What's that lady's name? The one that sent that thing?" She's like, she goes, "Do you have Lorna's address?" I think is what she said. And because we wanted to send a thank you card. I was like, actually, I think I do. So I'm really bad about thank yous and thank you cards. So namaste. It's awesome. I'll probably send you something out of the blue. I try to keep the addresses of all the people who have sent me stuff. And I actually have a bunch on my wall. And I'm like, one day I'm going to send all these people something cool. And I have sent actually some of my subscribers random shit. Um, I actually send a lot of my Kratom customers these Kratom keychains that I make. And I've been wanting to kind of make a business out of it. They're Kratom infused into resin, and I make these like bracelets out of them. So I was like, why not make keychains and just give them out to people? But maybe I'll do something like that someday. I need something for merch, something I make it myself. Lorna says, "Is UK cheese pot?" Yes, it is. Actually, it is. UK cheese cannabis. Well, I had some, but I don't. My wife has it now. She's in bed. I have Durban Poison here from South Africa, but it smells like licorice. I feel really bad for places that still have illegal cannabis, especially considering it was the United States that forced them to pretty much shut down the cannabis anyway. You know, just like they're trying to do with Kratom by going around the people and just going straight to like, saying it's federal, all other countries have to abide or we won't do trade with them. Yeah. Well, all that's going to change. I feel like we're living in a future already where there aren't enough agents or enough cops or enough anybody to do anything anymore. My wife and I, like I said, when we were in Portland the other day, it was disgusting. And the couple cops I saw drive by, like, they have no interest in any of the problems down there. They don't break up fights. They don't stop screaming nutcases. They don't, that are yelling at people. Like, there's so much trouble down there. It is so bad. I I mentioned this for anybody who's joined me recently here in the last, half hour or whatever. I have a video in the morning coming at 9 a.m. I don't know why I like to put them on the um, where you do the premiere thing, and so it's like it shows at 9 a.m. That way I can be there with people where I'm not kind of drinking and where I can be straight and coherent and pre-watch the video beforehand, make sure it's good because YouTube screwed up a couple of videos. I uploaded a video of my son's band playing while we were down in Portland. That's what we were there for, but um, it got out of sync. And when the words get out of sync from the music, that shit don't work. So I deleted that one. I'm going to start over and try again. But the one tomorrow is about the homelessness and how bad it is. And I really was shocked. I'm not going to deny. I was shocked at how many tents were down there in Portland. Not just one here and one there, but like, 8, 10 in a row on like almost every block. At least on one side of every block. Blocking businesses. I walked by one and it was like completely covering the whole sidewalk. I went around it. I bumped it briefly, just a little bit with my foot when I walked by. Got down to the end of the block, turned, and then I heard this guy yelling, "You're kicking my fucking tent, son of a," or what did he say? He's like, "You kicked my tent." He's like, "Fucker," or something like that. And I was just like, what? And I don't know. I did edit and put in the words uh, on the video I made for tomorrow. I thought it was kind of funny because I was like trying to say something. My wife's like, "Honey, what? He's not talking to you." I'm like, "Actually, he is. Like, He's standing there at the fence like this. I was like, why did he wait for me to get a block away? He was just sitting there by his tent when I walked by. And I was like, I know he has a mental disorder. And that's still, to me, there was part of me that said, that doesn't matter. People need to be responded to. And that's so childish, I know, but I can't help it. Maybe there's a small part of me that says, even if they are off the rocker, they'll at least understand that some people respond. But if they're not off the rocker, they might just be using that homelessness as an entitlement excuse. Because there are some homeless people that I've met that are not crazy. They're not off the rocker. I worked at a soup kitchen for months for fucking probation for doing community service. Seen a lot of people that really need help and are kind. A lot of people who really need help but won't take it. And some people who just take it and don't need it. Some people who are complete jerks about it. There's all kinds out there. A lot of different types of people. That's why I don't judge the homeless. Like I said, I saw people sweeping up their tents and the area around it. Not everybody is a complete slob. The city of Portland is blamed for a lot of the trash. It's horrible. The city leaders, the leadership has failed us. I don't, they may want you to blame the homeless because it looks bad, but the truth is, we've got a lot of vacant lots and fucked up buildings down there that we could do better with. And when they're building meridians and having parties and galas for all the city officials, and I don't buy it. Portland's a shithole. I'm not trying to say we can save it because I'm gonna move the fuck out of here. I don't live in Portland. I'm about 15 minutes away over the bridge in Vancouver. So a major earthquake happens in Portland, say, and the whole thing falls apart. I'm actually over the bridge, well away from there. So I'm not really worried about that. Vancouver, Washington is kind of a unique place. It is kind of a shithole in its own right, but it could be worse. You know what I mean? Yeah, anyhow, flip through the comments before I go here. And Deedster, hello. Deedster says, oh wow, you can be in, oh wait, where is it? If you wake up at 4 a.m. because you can't walk, cat walks in your face, check coffee, Kratom, and then listen to Carpool. See, that happens if you wake up in the middle of the night. You'll find out some YouTubers randomly live streaming where it's probably one here. I don't know. But Deedster says, I can be in Kentucky in 15 minutes across a bridge. And that, in Kentucky, it has areas to Lorna in Cincinnati. Oh, okay, so you're in Ohio, and that's 15 minutes from Kentucky. Thank you, that helps me. Look, I took geography, basic bullshit in school, but man, I really don't know where all the different relations are to the different states. My wife and I have been looking for a property in Kentucky now. She's been doing a lot more than me. We want to buy a farm in Kentucky. And I want to buy, it doesn't have to be a farm. I just want to buy a property where the house is at least decent. And I'm a carpenter. I'm a builder. I could do anything as long as I have something to work with here that's good. I need a house that's like at least 1,500 square feet, along with some sort of a detached garage or finished room, and a barn or shop, and 100 acres. I mean, Kentucky, every place I've looked at in Kentucky looks phenomenal. Truth is, I don't need 100 acres. I could go with like 50. But I don't want to be stuck buying like 10 acres. And it's not because we're rich. We're not. I'm broke. But the house we bought here, we invested in, and it's worth money now. I mean, we got lucky. People are buying cash houses here for like 350, 400 grand. Our neighbors sold theirs for 2 houses down. And we might not be able to get that right now, but we bought it for like 140. We still owe most of that because we got shitty loans, and all that personal bullshit doesn't matter. The point being that all we want to do is be able to afford to buy a piece of land and enjoy it. And I hope that one day we can. It's like my wife's been trying a lot harder than I have because maybe I feel like I don't deserve it, but god damn, I can't imagine just picking up and moving. And to all y'all out there, it wouldn't even make a difference, You wouldn't, I'd still be uploading probably and doing the same thing. But my wife was like, imagine being able to pack up all our shit and like record the journey and make it into like a vlog and how fun that would be. And it made me realize how boring my life has been in the last 10 years on YouTube. I've lived here. When I travel and I go out and do stuff, I always record it. I go camping. Y'all know when I have these, events I go to, festivals, I always do something. But for the most part, living at home is not that exciting. And I love sharing what I do. So hopefully one day I'll be able to go out and do a bunch of cool shit and fucking actually share it. But buying a property in Kentucky would be on the top of that fucking list. Or anywhere out there, to be honest. And I've heard Kentucky or that Ohio has some good spots. In fact, actually, I watched the Dave Chappelle thing last night, his special last night, the new one. He was talking about how he lives in Ohio, in like a hippie town in there. I can't remember what it's called, something Falls, I believe. And he says it's an awesome place. And I thought, yeah, my wife's like, let's move the fuck out there. He's like talking about how everybody's hippies. And I was like, yeah, well, we can handle that. But Ohio's got some good spots too. And it's funny because every state, you have kind of an image in your mind of what it's like, but it's not always like that. Like, my wife's like, land's pretty cheap in Colorado. I'm like, yeah, because half of it's desert. And we started looking, a lot of it's just fucking desert. But you think the same thing of Oregon. A lot of the Oregon shit's desert too. Like, you go out in eastern Oregon, over half of Oregon has no trees. Over half. I mean, I'm pretty sure it's over half anyway, as far as land area. But it has some sparse trees in areas, but for the most part, it's just sagebrush all the way east, all the way into Idaho, all the way into Wyoming, and then there's areas like rivers and valleys. But there's a lot of sagebrush and just desert out there. Nothing, no man's land. So, every state's got kind of their benefits and drawbacks. And to be honest, I would prefer to live in Washington State, where I live, for the rest of my life. But the cost of land out here is like 5 times more than it would be out there. I mean, I could get so much more land in Kentucky, and the land's more fertile. And everywhere I look, the land's fertile and beautiful out there. So, Mr. Hi Hongi, wait, I can't read it because my eyeballs don't work, but somebody says, come to rural Minnesota. Yeah, I don't want to live in anything that far north. I just feel like it's too much snow for me. I need something mid-range there. Huh. And it will always any know which always, I can't read the name, but it says, I hope you reach that dream. Oh, I'm in Western Virginia, barely barely 3 acres, but I'm happier than I was in Syracuse. Well, dude, if you lived in fucking Syracuse, New Jersey, man, I don't blame you. Shit. And see, there it goes. Again, the judgment. I've never been to New Jersey. I've never been to the East Coast. I can't sit here and say, oh, fuck New Jersey. New Jersey. Fucking New Jersey. Everything I've heard about New Jersey sucks. But I don't know because I've never been there. And I had somebody send me a message a while back saying, actually, some parts of New Jersey are beautiful. And I believe that. It's not like every state can be a cesspool completely. The thing is, I'm going to be honest, I don't have any desire to visit the East Coast other than to go to the Smithsonian and look at some old shit. I know that sounds stupid because there's some beautiful architecture in New York. I wouldn't mind walking through New York and looking at the architecture. The farthest east I've been is Anna Maria Island in Florida, where I got married 10 years ago. And I have been back like I think I've been there 3 times total. That's why we got married there. We'd been there twice. But I haven't really, beautiful white sands, sitting at the beach, all that's great. But Other than that, you drive back into Tampa and then get the fuck out of there because Florida sucks. I have no intention of living in Florida, and but other than that, the rest of the East Coast, there's just too populated. There's a lot of freeways. All you have to do is look at an arterial map of the highways in the U.S., including all East and West Coast areas. I already stressed out on the West Coast. Looking at the arteries out there, I mean, that shit is brutal. But if I did do it, I would have to do it probably like on a fucking some tour bus or something, or I don't know. Anyway, those are my thoughts on that. But if I'm going to move, I want to move to a place that's beautiful. There's only a few requirements besides the house and the land and the barn. I also need to have some harvestable timber on the land. I have to have land that's decent enough to farm on without needing heavy irrigation. But I also need a small stream, or at the very least, a good well that I can depend on. And I think that's crucial. I don't want something that can be pulled out like up in Washington here. We had an issue. A lot of the farmers depend on small irrigation from the rivers up here. And a lot of these rivers come off of Mount Adams, Mount Rainier. Well, there's a lot of illicit weed growers up here that actually siphon that shit off. They run pipes. It's very easy to do and relatively cheap and almost impossible to detect because they'll run, who knows. I mean, when I heard about it, I realized exactly how they do it. Probably 4, 6 inch pipes, and they'll run them right from the river, bury them under the rocks so there's a filter and a screen covered up. There's an intake, runs downhill to their weed garden wherever it might be on some property somewhere, or maybe they just guard it. But yeah, illicit cannabis market is still bigger than the legal cannabis market. So by the time the river gets down there, a lot of it's dried out. Point I'm making is that if I were to buy land, I'd like to know that it's not going to get ripped off by farmers up the stream or upriver or up well or people on the same aquifer because we're running out of fucking water, people. I mean, it's bad in a lot of places. And this is one of the last few places out here that still has water, the Northwest. I mean, California is going to run out for the most part. They'll find way to desalinate, seawater. The Colorado River is running out, so Utah, New Mexico, Nevada, all of these places are just starting to fall apart because they want to build more, but they don't have the water for it. And that's fucking scary, dude. I can't imagine living like that. All right, somebody says, Peace says, I'm from East Coast and moved out west. Most people there never left the West, and most of my friends never left the East. Yeah, it's like that. I mean, you kind of stick to the coast that you grew up on. Are you Biggie or Tupac? Growing up here in the East or in the West, when we would joke about East Coast shit when we were younger, like a completely different world. New Yorkers have a different, not just a different accent and attitude, but really, this is from what I've seen with the way a lot of people are interviewed in the East Coast and the way they come across as very arrogant, pretentious, and just kind of like standoffish. But there's part of this I understand because it needs to happen. Because a lot of people here on the West Coast are the same fucking way. They're just more Karen-like. People on the East Coast, okay, people on the West Coast, if they see you doing some shit they don't like, they might bitch you out and they might call the cops and complain about it. Somebody on the East Coast doesn't like it, they bitch you out and they beat your ass. Not necessarily, but you know what I mean. There's an agreement out there because they've already been through a lot of the shit that some of the bigger cities out here haven't quite faced yet. New York was a horrible place to live back in the 80s and 90s. A fucking horrible place to live. And they cleaned that shit up. They really did. And that's what gives me hope for Portland. Like I said, that just going around and filming all the homeless, all the tents in the streets, it's like the homelessness is not the problem. it's the one out of every few that once night hits, they get out, they're fucked up, they start causing trouble, breaking into shit, stealing things. I mean, there's people that set up markets down there now, like in the homeless camps, and sell shit that they stole in the local communities. And it's fucked up, but what do you do? You can't go out and blame every single person. Um, and it's hard because you know that it probably means more to them than it does to the person that they stole it from. The truth is, I was at the park the other day here, and I've mentioned before I had my car stolen out of my driveway the other morning, like a month ago. And it was the second time that car's been stolen. And the third time a car's been stolen from us. We've had a lot of break-ins and problems in the driveway. I've got security system, doesn't seem to matter. But at my local park up the street, it's only like a block by a block. And walk into this little like wooded area and walk around it with my dog, and I look in there and there's somebody stashed away two um, those big metal what am I hand trucks, yeah, for carrying like one of them was a big one for like carrying refrigerators, appliances. The other one was a smaller one, like kind of had a plastic base, shitty wheels. Left that one, took the big ass metal burly one and drug that fucker home like 10 blocks and kept it, and took the straps too. My first thought was, local thieves stash their fucking hand trucks in the woods in my park, and then walk around and steal local shit in the neighborhood. We've had all kinds of problems out here, and people are starting to, yeah, get ready to take shit into their own hands. But, that's another story altogether. Fucking thieves. What do you do about thieves, right? At any rate, I guess I should go. I'm going to say bye to everybody. So bye to everybody. I'm not tired, but I need to go to bed. And I appreciate everybody who came. If you haven't hit the like button, hit the like button. Even though YouTube will not give a shit about the algorithm or any of that. My final notes, make sure that you watch the video in the morning if you happen to be awake, even though it's already, what, 2? Shit, I gotta go to bed. I have a premiere at 9 a.m. of the videos I took in Portland, and it's kind of depressing, but I try to do some editing style on there and some ninja shit. And I really wanted to share I guess, the nasty graphic nature of what Portland is. But I didn't even go into the nasty shit. It's like, I could have walked down there and filmed a bunch of puke piles and everything else I've seen. I'm not going to do that. But it's like, as I said, this video, living in the Matrix, that whole thing, like, it's easy for us to kind of back away and live in a bubble and not see what's going on around us. And I don't want to focus on what's going on around us. I don't want to see the negativity. I don't want to see the problems of the world. I want to focus on happiness and rainbows and unicorns, even if that unicorn has to be wearing a mask. That's an inside joke between me, by the way. I'll share that picture with you all later. Some Portland thing. So before I go, I want to tell you all a story because I appreciate you sticking around to the end. And it's a funny story, and god damn it, I wish I had it on video. So we went to see my son play in Portland. As I said, he was playing at like this bar, and it's kind of divided by this like sliding wood door, right? Between a bar, a small bar, and then this area on the other side with the stage, and then basically only like 3 small wooden tables with like 5, 6 chairs. And my son wanted us to come to watch him play. So we went down there, and we could hear the music playing, walked up and to the door, and watched him through the window for a minute, then walked in. And I looked in, and I noticed there was like 3 other hippie peeps that know the band and know us as the parents of one of the band members, right? We just know some of their fans and friends. And we walked in and kind of stood by a table, but our first thought was like, I don't want to put a mask on, fuck. And nobody was wearing a mask. There were only like 3 or 4 people, but nobody had a mask. So we walked in and kind of just leaned back from the wall and listened. Meanwhile, there's the whole band there. There's like 6 of them. Now, the keyboardist, he's from I think South Africa. He's fucking cool, dude. He's a really really nice guy. He's a fucking awesome keyboardist. They all just met, like, so they're all kind of just friends. He's the only one that wore a mask in the band, and then there was also the guy who was working the basically the levels. He's the guy that worked at the bar. He's the sound guy, right? And it's a very small bar, so there's not much to do. He's just trying to get it right. But he's fucking with levels, and he has a mask on. And I noticed he kept looking at me and looking at all of us. And I didn't even think anything of it. I don't know why. I was like, maybe he thinks we're dead sexy. No, I had really no clue. And then a little while later, it must have been like an hour or two later, there were like 8 of us in there just hanging out, partying, drinking beer, listening to the music. And then I walked over to the other parts of the bar to get a beer, and there was some people in line, and one of the girls leaned over. She goes, are you Rachel's dad? And I was like, yeah, actually I am. And she's like, oh yeah, we met at the party because they played live in the woods. And we talked for a minute, and I got my beers, went back, and then they ended up coming in and listening to the music. As soon as they got in, there was 2 younger guys. They must have been in their early 20s. The sound guy walks right up and asks them to put their masks on. I couldn't tell at first, but then they pulled them up. I could tell, and I was like, that's so weird. Like, all of us are a little older, but still, he didn't ask any of the 8 of us to put our masks on. But anyway, eventually they just pulled them off anyway, and we all just enjoyed ourselves. Didn't matter. My battery died on my GoPro. We were all about to leave. The band was done playing, and everybody was in there having a beer, saying goodbyes. And my wife told me the story, so it's a secondhand story. And god damn it, I wish I'd been in there. She says all of a sudden, just out of the blue, as everybody's saying goodbye and stuff, some big dude walks in there, and he goes, everybody in here, you should all be wearing masks. And I guess, like, nobody did anything. And it was one of those moments where she was like, I didn't know if the guy worked there, and he was upset because they weren't following regulation. He didn't want to get the company in trouble because it might have been shift change, but nobody had said anything up to that point. And or it could be B, just some random customer, male Karen out there just trying to tell people what to do. But most of all, my thought was that all of us there, including the band, and everybody in there as an audience, had chosen to be in there. And it's just such a fucked up time to where you have to worry about not just like, you have to show your papers. You don't want to drink too much. Don't want to cause a ruckus. Don't be out after curfew. It's like living under constant bullshit. But anyway, for another time, thanks for listening again. I guess I've recorded this onto a podcast as well, which I might share in the future. Or maybe not. I don't know. I'm going to turn this thing off, and I'm going to say goodbye to you all too. Whoops. It's weird. Oh, there we go. Yeah, little voice recorder. Love it. Thanks for coming along. I appreciate all of you, and I really do. Sometimes I just need to unload some thoughts. And for those of you who missed at the beginning, I mostly was talking about schools, the school system, and how fucked up it is, but also how we have to kind of accept it for what it is and make it work for us. But that, we're living in a time now where things are changing, and they're changing quickly. And I don't know where it's going to go from here, but it's kind of exciting. It's kind of fun. I mean, to be honest, you can't be afraid of the future because, especially if you're young, if you're confused, if you're young, don't end up being a nihilist or just saying nothing matters, because really that's just, it's an unhappy way to live. The best way is just to create the reality you can for yourself. And so Thanks for coming along. As usual, I'll probably delete this because I always delete my live streams because I've always had a few beers and it's embarrassing when I've been drinking. But peace out. Talk to you next time. Say hi to your mama or your dada, or if you don't have parents, whatever. I don't know. Talk to you next time. Later.